We acknowledge that Tri-Cities Community Television operates on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. We thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them along with the waters and all that is above and below.
Welcome to Face to Face. I'm your host, Geneviève Kyle-Lefebvre. Face to Face is a bilingual series of video recorded here in Coquitlam. Today I'm sitting with Rob Boies, founder and CEO of rented123.com and housing advocate. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much for having me.
I think it's Robert, but everybody calls you Rob, right?
Correct, yeah. Sometimes we got to be careful with that, but that's another story.
Yes. So housing advocate, how this came along, how come?
You know what, I've always been passionate about housing. I was raised by a single mom, 5 kids. We were lucky because my mom was a banker, well, a head teller, because back in those days she was restricted as to how far up the corporate ladder she could climb. We always had our own home as homeowners, and I always remember my mom helping friends who, primarily single moms, who were renters, and just some of the struggles that came with that. Ever since, I became an adult, I'm interested in housing, and I'm licensed in a couple of disciplines within the housing sector, and it's just always been a passion of mine.
I think you also serve on council in Anmore, is that right?
I did, not currently, many years ago.
Yes.
As a young man. Grew up primarily in Burnaby, but I moved to Anmore. To this day, I'm passionate about politics and our community, and I was very fortunate to be an elected council person in Anmore.
Excellent. I'm asking this because I want the people that are watching this interview to get the feel of how involved you are in our community and why you decided to talk about the housing advocate today with us. So tell us a little bit, what's happening right now in the Tri-Cities? What are the problems?
Look, we have a housing crisis, right? We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, and it should be an area, the greater Tri-Cities area should be somewhere that everybody should be able to come, work, play, raise their children, age in place, and there's struggles with that. And I personally don't think we can count on the government to do everything for us, right? So, I own a company, and we're looking to supply safe, secure, and rewarding housing options for all of the players within the sector, whether you're a landlord with a basement suite, a renter, new to country, starting out as a young adult, or people that manage and supply housing in the marketplace. My company enables people to do that safely and more securely and more rewarding.
Okay. So we're all hearing a little bit, some people are having a hard time finding an apartment. Apartments are really expensive. Costs are like more and more and more. So what would you say, are you bringing any solution? How can people actually found housing here in the Tri-Cities?
Well, look at, this problem goes really back to the 70s and 80s, where CMHC got out of the housing, of developing housing. And we've gone on a real run here where it's been market housing, right? And that's where you have to purchase it. At the same time, I don't believe that government policy has kept up to keep housing options available to everybody within the marketplace. So we have examples, and we're all familiar with them, like 3030 Gordon, which is, an entry level to bring people in off of the street. But, at the same time, we see homelessness camps spreading across that community, and it's really a struggle for the businesses in the community. I take my children by there often, and we talk about why those people are likely homeless, right? And it's not by choice most of the time. Sometimes bad choices can compound, right? But we need to do more as a society to enable more safe, secure onboarding, which is what my company does, and at the same time, more rewarding than just the roof over your head. And once again, there's options out there for us to really impact our communities, where it's a community regardless of your financial abilities and your health, right? We should all have safe, secure housing.
So Rob, I'm curious because we often talk about stats, and people like to base their conversation on what's happening like here in other countries. Do you have any example you can talk to us about?
Look, as someone who's passionate about housing, I study not only other countries and jurisdictions that are having success, and yet we can also learn some from the failure. So let me show you some success, and you can Google this right now as you're watching the show. Finland. Finland has taken the emphasis off of SROs, single room occupancy housing, and they've started to invest, or actually they're well into their investment because we're starting to see results in Finland, into more long-term housing. Now with that said, there has to be some accountability for the people and their recovery, right? So I'm not a mental health advocate and I don't have a background in that, but I do understand housing, okay? So they get people stable, they get them recovered and on a path. And then they put them in long-term housing, and actually the individual's name is put on that lease and they're explained, you're responsible for this home. You're responsible, likely they're getting some government assistance on paying the monthly rent and whatnot. And once again, little segue, my company reports on-time rent payments. So that person who was once homeless can build a credit profile, but they're responsible for the housing and for the rules of the housing, for being a good neighbor, for being a good community member, attending what it is they're supposed to be attending. And Finland is seeing a drastic drop in homelessness, and they believe it's because of this focus away from SROs and a focus on long-term accountable housing.
Okay. Well, I think it's great to have an example like this that we know that works somewhere in the world, that we can inspire ourselves here locally in the Tri-Cities. And you touched on a little bit about what's happening with 3030 Gordon. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this, like why people are all of a sudden like they are there, and there's many reasons, we all know why, but can you elaborate a little bit what's happening there?
And once again, limited to my experience as somebody who invests, manages into the traditional housing market, but somebody who has a passion for understanding. I'm very blessed, Geneviève, to be able to travel, and to sometimes the chagrin of my wife, I engage with homeless people from around the world on my travels. And part of it is we have a climate here that is much more conducive to being homeless, say, in the middle of Saskatchewan, right, where it's very, very cold, or the Midwest of the United States, etc. So much of the challenges that we're having is it's very tough for politicians on a 4-year election cycle to make long-term decisions. Now I understand politicians, you're listening to this right now, and you're saying it's easy from my side of the camera to complain, but at the same time, NIMBYs, people don't want homelessness shelters in their backyard, and I think we need to get over that. But I think when we look to Finland and we look at free enterprise options such as my company, Rented 123, that's really making it more secure. And we also use AI on the communication piece, so the tenant and the landlord is getting much better information rather than water cooler talk, right? Mm-hmm. Where people don't really understand, as a housing provider, for instance, with a basement suite, what your rights and responsibilities are. But when you take it back to 3030 Gordon, there's a lot of mental health. We don't have the proper mental health capacity. I have challenged many of our local politicians, and I know this is going to ring true for any of them that are watching. I challenge our local politicians, our MLAs and our MPs, to call the largest ever First Minister's meeting. And British Columbia should host it, because many communities have a housing problem, but we face the brunt of the housing problem, okay? And what we need Solicitor General, we need Attorney General, we need the Finance Minister, and we need the leaders within our communities to sit down and to commit to short-term, mid-term, and long-term funding and solutions. And I want to be part of that as a free enterprise entrepreneur, already being recognized for providing safe, secure, and rewarding solutions. But until politicians stand up and take this situation serious, we see them. I drive down the downtown east side all the time. My 12-year-old, my 10-year-old, they understand what's going on down there with mental health, addiction, and other issues. And quite frankly, they understand better than many politicians do in our community. And it's just the facts. And people who know me know that I tell them this to their face and they don't like it, but sometimes the truth hurts, Genevieve.
It's true. So tell us a little bit, like what's the reality right now for someone in the Tri-City that's looking to rent something, what's happening?
Yeah.
And also we'll talk after this for the person that are actually the owner of the places that are renting. What are the challenges for both? So let's start with the renters right now.
Yeah. So the great thing is rental prices are coming down. The challenge is, and that's the...
Why is it going down?
Why is it coming down? Primarily because we have put a limit on immigration, which is a whole other subject. We need immigrants. Immigrants are the fiber of our country, and we need more of them, not less of them. And I'll challenge anybody, anytime, to debate me on that. They're the fiber of our country, okay? However, we have, through political reasons, because we just went through a federal election cycle, we have suppressed much of the immigration, and that has made more housing available because, you know, immigrants were coming here and they're still coming here. The fact of the matter is they're still coming here. They're still coming here in large numbers. And we do have more housing stock in the market. Municipalities, and look, I'll acknowledge Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam specifically, who have put a better emphasis on providing rental housing. But you got to remember, the people building that is, you know, private enterprise, primarily taking on their own risk, okay, of financing that. Because I can tell you firsthand, the CMHC, the federal government program of trying to get funding, if I had a piece of land right now to build, the CMHC process to get that approved in conjunction with the municipal rezoning process, it would never happen. We would never see that housing. So, you know, the crux of your question was there's better options, okay? However, it's a struggle for people, mom and pop operators, right? They don't trust that if they get a bad tenant, and they don't know how to vet that tenant. And that's, you know, where my company is becoming acknowledged, as we mentioned earlier, by the BC Business Council and the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. We now have tools for $20, okay? You can vet a tenant without hiring a professional such as me to manage that process for you. And sometimes, you know, with the cost of a mortgage, the cost of just being the landlord, sometimes they don't want to pay a professional such as myself to really help put some, you know, some people in place. But we use technology, some of the best in the space. We verify every ID around the world. So you can imagine someone coming in as an immigrant and they're traveling on an international passport. Well, as a mom and pop operator, you're probably going to be insecure with identifying that ID. You don't have any background, but we use the cell phone and secure data links, and you get a PDF and you can verify that that ID is real. And we use AI to confirm that I'm not submitting your ID where I'm trying to get around the process. We do a credit check, and we do the best in sector. It's our own intellectual property, but we use AI to background check people, okay? And I sometimes recommend people also use it outside of the housing sector. When you're just not sure about that person that you met on one of those dating sites, you can come to rent2123.com.
Thank God I'm married.
Yes, and do a background check, right? But, you know, we're providing solutions because really the government, surprise, surprise, and I really support a lot of what the provincial government has been doing over the last 7-8 years in the housing file. I'm not an Airbnb supporter. I think they did the right thing, and to the chagrin of many people watching who would say, you know, that's a bad thing. I should be able to do anything I want with my house, but in a housing crisis situation. But part of the reason people, homeowners, basement suites, otherwise separate condos, went the Airbnb route is because they didn't trust the government through the BC Residential Tenancy branch to really help them remove bad tenants. And I come back to my enterprise, my company. We make sure that you get a better vetting experience. We also certify tenants. If you're a tenant struggling, maybe you've come through a divorce, or once again, you're new to country, Rented123 will certify and bond your rent. We will guarantee your rent. We will give you a full certification process that you can take to any landlord and say, hey, this is who I am. Maybe my credit score is a little bit low because of bad decisions. Lots of times it's a divorce. Sometimes it's a failed business. And we've seen, you know, through COVID and experiences in our, you know, in our society where some businesses have failed, and that has affected people's credit, which has affected their housing. And sometimes that's the domino effect that ends up seeing people on the street. We can affect homelessness. It's just going to take more courage by government and partnership with free enterprise such as myself.
Okay. So you did talk about the service you are providing. We talked a little bit about the problem right now, what's happening locally in the Tri-Cities. So is there any other solutions?
Look, it's getting better. We need more housing. We need less NIMBY. And look, not in my backyard will always be around, but politicians are going to have to make better decisions, and we're going to have to be prepared to accept all types of housing within our communities. We can specialize. We talked about Gordon, right? That's in an industrial, light industrial. There's a lot of mechanics and whatnot. Look, I've talked to the owner of the tire shops down there. Is it fair to that tax-paying, hard-working individual to have people defecate on his front door, to be using drugs, which they're addicted, right? So they're not doing it to upset the owner, right? But we have to do more, and at the same time, we need to give these people better supports. At the same time, hold them more accountable to a pathway forward. My wife, who is a very, very smart individual, and she often says, if you believe it's possible, it will be. And I believe that we can affect homelessness and get people off the street and get them into safe, secure, and rewarding housing.
So what is the city of Port Coquitlam and Port Moody can do different to help? First of all, maybe 3030 Gordon we talk about, but also in general, the housing, process.
We need to increase the efficiency so that the rezoning can happen quicker, right? People who don't want change will constantly say, not enough time to consult. I was not consulted. Anmore just went through a 2.5-year consultation, and the developer had to pull back. I'm sure there's a multitude of reasons. I personally was involved in an Anmore situation where I helped my neighborhood fix a sewer septic problem that was foisted upon us, okay? And the bureaucracy slowed us down. It took us 3.5 years to fix an environmental hazard that was caused by developing local schools, okay? The problem is right in front of our face. And a lot of times we're not electing the right people who are prepared to make decisions with good information in front of them. AI, for instance, and once again, my company uses 3 different types of AI in our company. AI is a good way forward. We can increase the efficiency of the approval process. I believe the federal government is going to be putting more money into housing, and that's the key thing because immigration is going to keep coming. I think it's really important that we have good immigration. It's not just the doctors leaving the United States political system. And of course, we give 2 thumbs up to doctors and nurses coming here from around the world, but specifically there's a surge coming out of the US because we need that, but we need all kinds of people. We need the people to serve you your coffee in the morning, and sometimes it's frustrating because English isn't their first language, but they're there, they're working hard, and if you have a problem with it, all due respect, the problem is usually the person looking you back in the mirror in the morning. However, I think the plan is before us, and we need more people such as myself, entrepreneurs, to partner with government and accelerate housing options.
Absolutely. So people like me, or like you, or anybody we know around us that wants to make a difference, what can we do as Tri-Cities residents?
Most important thing that you can do is ask better questions of people looking for your support when it comes time for elections. Be prepared to ask them hard questions, and if they're not prepared, that should tell you everything that you need to know. Remember, your ballot is secret, and you may have a friend, a neighbor, an associate, someone you know from a well-intended organization, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, other organizations. I'm not saying not be friendly to them, but you need to ask better questions when we're electing people, plain and simple. The better quality of person that we're going to elect, and if housing like me is something that's important to you, or education, multi-language education, all those options, you need to elect better people.
Mm-hmm. You did touch on a little bit about municipality needs to work better with the province, and the province needs to have a better link with Canada altogether, right? In my what I'm understanding, there was a bit of a change. The government of Canada has, for the first time last year, gave a little bit of money for housing that went back down all the way to the province. So how far do you think this is going to go and is going to be doing an impact?
Look, part of the problem is the way we govern, so the bureaucracy of government. Look at, I said I like some of the things that the provincial government has done, and I know this was a federal question, and I'm going to get right back to that. But our provincial government made every member of their caucus a level of cabinet, either a senior level cabinet minister or a secretariat. Frankly, that is a gross spend on our resources, okay? You look at Mark Carney. Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, has the smallest cabinet, not only his interim cabinet before he ran, in an election and became the Prime Minister, he now has the smallest cabinet in history. And that's important, okay? Because you can't have 50 ministries trying to grab at limited tax dollar resources. Look, we can count in this room right now, I bet you no more than 12 priorities that our government should have. Housing is one of them, right? Our medical system, mental health. I want to support the farmers more. Rented 123 is actually working on some initiatives where we can bring small scale produce operations into your garage, into your basement suite, into a spare room. That's for another day. However, government needs to be smaller, it needs to be focused, and it needs to be accountable to the results. We don't need any more of this double speak or excuses. What we need is results. We shouldn't have, in a country like this that is so rich and so vast, we shouldn't have people living on the street.
Absolutely. So what I'm understanding is Rental 123 is offering very affordable ways for people to overcome the maybe being scared to rent to certain people because they don't know how to navigate, like you said, like overseas people or new people or people that have some little bumps in the road and that are good people that will pay and that will be good tenant.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more? So you did touch on it's about $20. You fill the application, and you guys, your vision to help here in the Tri-Cities to make it very affordable for to link between the renters and the person that is renting the place to make it a little bit more easier, streamlined.
Exactly. So we use data and secure data links and AI to help you do the background check. And it's not just exclusive to me. We offer, as a full service rental manager, which we're happy to do that for you, right? But once again, because of the cost of your mortgage, the cost of property taxes, just the cost of being a landlord, at times you're thinking, I don't want to give this person, my company charges a flat fee, okay? But maybe you can't afford the extra $100 that it would cost. For $21, we give you a full vetting package. You can just go to the link on my website. It says vet your tenant. We verify the ID. Remember, you get the PDF. It has an AI redundancy, so there's no fraud there. The number one fraud point for a tenant looking to do bad, right, to a landlord, to not be a good tenant, is fake ID, okay? We eliminate that. Our Rented 123 checkmark logo will be known, we say just like Coca-Cola, it's going to be a logo that's going to be known that the fraudsters aren't going to come to your property because we use that process. We do a credit score. Remember, if your credit score is not high enough, we have a third-party bond that guarantees your rent. Okay, if you ever lose your job, you think about it. If you're sitting there right now and you're a landlord and you're worried about taking on a tenant who can't pay you, right? Maybe a friend's child or something, you want to help a friend out. You can get a bond as low as $15 a month that you can pay if you want, or you can charge back to the tenant that will guarantee the tenant's rent. We have a 2-year bond that guarantees against a bad tenant that we will pay a lawyer to remove your tenant and we'll pay you 2 years of lost tenancy. And it's very, very affordable. And then our intelligent background check searches everywhere and gives a score if that person has any profile. If it's somebody who doesn't have any profile, your child who's just starting out in life and they don't have a LinkedIn profile, we check the court systems, we check everywhere, but we give it a score. So for instance, I'm the model for the AI. I am a low risk. There's medium risk who maybe have a couple of issues that need to be checked. Remember, we check international court systems, state court systems, provincial court systems. We do an intelligent deep dive on the person for $21. For $6 a month, Geneviève, Captain Cashflow, who is our AI superhero, can do all of the communications with the tenant. $6 a month for a peace of mind, okay? once again, you don't have to hire me full service, although I'm happy to take care of that for you. We have a franchise system, so we are planting our Rented 123 franchises across the country. We're opening some up in the United States right now. So these opportunities are available to everybody. If you have a vacant property right now, if you have a vacant suite and you want to bring somebody in, go for $20 and test our services. So that makes housing more attainable by people, because that's part of the problem. Because people don't trust the government laws, right, to remove a bad tenant, they leave their property vacant, or they were going to the Airbnb market, the Vrbo market, and vacation rentals, and you never really knew who you were getting in your house. Anyways, they had a lot of good comments and stuff, and you could kind of score that tenant and kind of know who was coming in. But I could rent a place and my friend could go in there with an access code, right? So we, through data and secure data links, we make it safe, secure, and rewarding for the traditional housing market and the commercial space as well. If you have commercial space and you're having problems, reach out to me.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that's going to help a lot of people here in the Tri-Cities. If they want to go through your service, or they want to understand a little bit what's happening right now, I think it's important to understand what's the problem and what are my options here, right? So thank you for your time.
There's great options.
Yes, there's great options. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you very much.
From Tri-Cities Community Television and myself, Geneviève Kyle-Lefebvre, thank you so much for joining us today.